Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of Your Favorite Movies. This week, I'm talking with Trevor of Film Geeks. And what are we talking about today, Trevor?
We're talking about Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, possibly the best movie of all time.
It's up there, one of them. I think almost everyone can agree. This is just such a fantastic movie. And how are you
Oh,
doing
yeah.
today?
Dude, doing great. It's Wednesday, so hump day. Can't complain, dude. And thanks for inviting me on. I've been watching it for a while, so I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, it's like finally, I've been watching your stuff, you've been watching mine, I've watched
Yep.
yours with Chris, like all this, and
Yeah.
it's just like finally, it's all coming together. But
Yes,
do you
sir.
remember the first time you watched this movie?
Oh gosh. So I was a little kid and we went to I had some blockbusters. We mostly had Hollywood videos in where I'm from. And we went there and my dad rented all three of them. They're on VHS at the time in the early 2000s. So we got Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King. We watched them all in a weekend. And as a kid, you're just looking for like the action, the fight scenes, you know. You just want to fast forward, you're ruining the tape fast forward to see the cool moments. But then as I got older and started rewatching them more and more, I was like, the drama, the build-up, the story, the characters, it all hit so much more. And Return of the King, I was probably like, it came out, I believe, in 2004, 2003. So I was like,
2003, yeah.
yeah, I'm probably about 6 years old when I first watched them. And I mean, like, ever since then, dude, I always loved them. I had the plastic sword Sting, that's Frodo's sword. I had him. I was like, I'd run around my house killing imaginary orcs, you know. So I've always been a Lord of the Rings nerd for sure.
That's awesome. I mean, I yeah, I do remember the first time I watched it. It's kind of funny. Just to talk about like we were talking about video stores. I showed Trevor this
Yeah.
before. This is my beautiful copy of
Yep.
the movie. This is the full screen DVD of it. It used to be a rental. All this it says DVD catalog rental, and it sucks. I don't watch this copy. I don't think I have. And this actually just came into my head. I remember that when I started my channel, one of the first videos I did was ranking the trilogy. The video isn't up anymore, so
Oh man.
it might be if it's unlisted, I'll send it to you, Trevor. But it was terrible. But I do remember like one of the first things I did for this channel was rewatch all the movies. But the first time I saw it, the first time I saw Fellowship, I was this was about what it would have been like 5 or 6 years ago, and I was
Yeah.
this is when Minecraft was like a big deal. So I was playing
Okay.
Minecraft with my friend Aiden, and he had all the Lord of the Rings movies. So I remember watching Fellowship, but we weren't really watching it because we were just playing. It
Oh,
was just
okay.
on in
Yep.
the background. And then I borrowed the DVD of Two Towers and watched it on a 4 hour car ride, and I loved it. I couldn't really comment on Fellowship. And then I watched Return of the King on my iPad mini because it was on Netflix. I watched the extended edition actually, and since it's 4 hours and 23 minutes, I watched it over like short like or like maybe like hour 45 minute
Yeah.
chunks. This would have been probably 5 years ago, yeah. And we were at a hockey tournament. I don't know if it was I think it was one of my brothers in Niagara Falls here in Ontario. So I just remember that well. And then of course I rewatched them, and this one, just like all the other ones, is one of my favorite movies. It is my favorite Lord of the Rings movie, and I
Oh
think
yeah.
we can agree it is one of the best ones just of all time.
Oh, for sure. I think it holds the record, that and Titanic, for the most Oscar wins of 11. So
Yeah.
that's saying something pretty good.
That's something, at least back then. But no, the Oscars were
Yeah.
pretty solid. But
Yeah.
it's just it's such an it's such an exciting movie. But it also, as you mentioned, has all that drama stuff. So like when I
Yeah.
rewatched it, I remember now. Obviously, it's been nearly 3 years since I've watched them, and I need to watch them again in 4K
Oh yeah.
when the price drops.
Oh yeah.
Hopefully, hopefully, but they're just so exciting, and they all have something really special about them. And it seems to be the most basic choice, but it's just
Yeah.
obviously I think the best one, and it
Yeah.
has one of the most epic climaxes of all time, I think.
Oh, 100%. I mean, just like the battles throughout it, but like I loved how like there was no true main character. Obviously, the main plot point was Frodo taking a ring to Mount Doom to drop it in fire. But like you have like Legolas, Aragorn, and Gimli who are like they're like owned like, but kind of like in Return of the King, it's like Aragorn's movie in a way. Like he's on the
Yeah.
screen majority of the time, and like just he goes and gets the army of the dead. Then Frodo and Sam are almost in Mordor, and then Merry and Pippin. There's so many other characters. You know, like who do you even root for? It's just so cool. That's what I love about it, and like I won't get into all of it, but I mean, like, I get chills during several scenes every single time. Oh, it's the best.
100%. I just love how there's all these storylines, but you're not mad when it cuts away from one of them and goes to the other
Yeah.
one. Because sometimes movies can have a problem when they're trying to
Oh, yeah.
balance all these people that, you're like, oh, I want to see what happens next. But then you're put to another really interesting one. And there's a reason why Aragorn is like the one who's on when you go to IMDb, like he's the one
Yeah.
on the cover. He's a big one on the cover because it's his movie. And
Oh, yeah.
Legolas has always been one of my favorite characters. I don't know what it is, but like ever since the first time I watched, I'm like, maybe it's just because it's Orlando Bloom and I love Pirates of the Caribbean
Yeah.
too. But I was just like, this guy is so cool. Some of the moves he does here, and that shot where, like, obviously, I think when we're talking about chills, I'm getting chills even thinking about it for Frodo, and he just runs in
Oh
with all the
my
army there.
gosh, so
Top
good.
10
And then
moments in all of movies. Oh my God,
oh,
it's just.
agreed. Oh, it's the best. And God, that just makes me want to cry. And then my personal favorite moment of like the entire trilogy is when they're at Aragorn and Arwen's wedding, at the very end, at the top of Minas Tirith, the castle in Gondor. And CSR, my nerd Lord of the Rings nerddom's coming out, but all the hobbits, they bow to him. He's like, my friends, you bow to no one. And then the freaking score plays, man, and a little flute. You're like, oh my God, it's so good. It gets me, man, every time.
I totally get that's one of my favorite lines ever, and it just perfectly shows like how heroic they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, since we're on the topic of favorite scenes, one that's always stuck with me was like one of the most epic moments ever is when, of course, Sam and Frodo are going up the mountain, and then Frodo's kind of getting a little knocked down,
Yeah.
getting a little bit, and he's like I forget the full line, but he's like, "I can't carry it for you, but I can carry
I
you.
carry you.
Come on!" And it's just like that, and just seeing him like go with him on,
Yep.
and then of course we have Gollum here, and Gollum because I've read The Hobbit, and I watched those movies first. Obviously, they don't even compare to Lord of the Rings, and I haven't read the Lord of the Rings books, but Gollum's just been one of my favorite characters, and like he's just so like evil in this one too. You can see he's scheming around it, and obviously that whole scene with the ring and all that up in mountain. It's just so epic, and the movie looks visually so stunning too. Like
Oh
the
my gosh.
VFX to me still hold up today.
Oh yeah, that's what's crazy is like for like what Peter Jackson did. Like I think that's where he messed up with the Hobbit, where he did like a lot of like the CGI. It looks
Yeah.
really animated at times. But with this, he did the practical effects, much more expensive. But like Gollum never looked more real. Even in 2021, you go back and watch it, you're like, this was made when? Like dang
Yeah.
near 20 years ago. And that's what's like these movies were made from like 1999 to 2003. Like 3 years, they cranked out three dang near masterpieces. Like they're all in the
I
top
think
15 of
so.
IMDb. It's insane that 3 years they did all that, took us on this journey, took on a story, and we're getting the Lord of the Rings show, which I'm hyped for. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, just trilogy, what a
Expensive.
450 mil a season, holy moly! Oh, Jeff Bezos, you bastard. But I mean, back to Return of the King. I mean, just
Yeah.
dude, I could literally gush about it for hours and hours and hours, from the epic moments to the fights to just the characters to Gandalf the White and like Merry and Pippin, and then like I am not a man. She stabs the Witch King in the face with a sword. So much that goes down, dude. It's literally, I can't believe they fit it in like all this movie. And I haven't seen the extended editions. I've seen the scene of Sauron towards the beginning of the film, extended edition. I see why they cut it because it's kind of cheesy. I laughed my ass off when I saw it. I was like, "This is great," but I was like, "I see why they cut it from the original for sure."
Yeah, when I rewatch them, like there's part of me that wants to just watch the extended editions again because I don't like I'm just wondering I don't typically remember the differences unless they're like
Yeah,
super obvious. Like for example, Batman vs Superman, there were a few where I was like, yeah, this is really obvious. This was
yeah,
when I rewatched it before the Snyder cut. But then there were a bunch where I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that they even changed this. And these
yeah.
ones obviously because they're like an hour longer, like some of them
Mm-hmm.
are a lot longer. It
Yeah,
makes sense when you can feel the differences. And technically, this is the extended edition of this one is the longest movie I've seen. But it's very hard to make a movie that's what either 3 hours or 4 hours and 23
oh,
minutes
yeah,
that is so engaging and exciting the entire time. This movie never lets up, in my opinion. And I
yeah.
think like basically everyone agrees it's one of the best trilogies of all time. Even if I hear people all the time, say Lord of the Rings is overrated, Lord of the Rings this, and I'm like No, no,
It's
it's
really not. It's not.
no, it isn't, and it's like there's just this perfect series of movies. Obviously, you said because they were made back to back to back. So we just, I mean, I can't believe going to like for the people who got to go see this in theaters, their minds must have. It would have been
I
like seeing
know.
Jaws or Star Wars. Like, what is this new
Yeah.
thing? Like, I 'cause obviously I wasn't like we were going to the theaters back then, but I couldn't imagine like being in the hall, walking out, having every single person in there, like especially for this one, the finale, what everyone would be saying. Oh my God.
I know. That's what I feel like it's probably like how Endgame was for us, like that
Yeah.
epic. I feel like that's what Return of the King was for them because like, it's such a popular show. It's why the movie. It's why the show has such a high budget because like the Lord of the Rings fandom is enormous. I mean that movie made over $1 billion a long time ago. So that's what's so crazy about it. And like I never saw them in theaters. They came into my theaters during COVID last year. I got my tickets and they closed the theater again, so I never got to see
Damn.
it. But I know one day it's gonna happen. I'm gonna like bring a Blu-ray. I say, can you just put this on a screen for me? I'll pay you. I'll pay for a whole theater so they can put it for me.
Pay $300. Let me see this. But
Yep,
like
I
that, this is
would, dude.
another film which I've only seen at home. But it's like this is why we need movie theaters. I was thinking obviously because Endgame came out. Well, it's like Infinity War came out 3 years ago yesterday. But there are so many movies that are proof. This is a whole other topic for a whole other time. But I'll just quickly sum it up of like why we need movie theaters. And it's because of movies like this. You need to see, like, I think or the best way to see, you don't like need to, but the best way to
Yeah.
see so many of these battles would be on a screen that's the size of your room. Like,
Oh yeah.
oh, like I mean, I wish that Ontario wasn't so stupid with COVID and all that, so
Yeah.
that they would, or if they open theaters, they would put these back in theaters. Because even if it was the extended editions, I'd go sit down and I'd enjoy the entire thing. Like, do
Yeah.
you have a favorite character or anything? Is there like one that stands out to you, or are they all just great?
Samwise Gamgee, man. I'm a Samwise Gamgee lover. He's the absolute best. He was Frodo's gardener, his best friend, his companion. He's the unsung hero of the whole thing. Without Sam, Frodo was screwed. I'm not the biggest fan
Yeah.
of Frodo. I've always been Sam. He's my guy. One of my favorite characters ever, if not
Yeah,
my favorite.
yeah, I love Sam as well. Like I remember playing this was at like a resort. I don't know. This is probably before I even watched the movies, but I probably would have saw The Hobbit by then of like the Lego Lord of the Rings game. Do you
Okay.
know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
I'm like they
Yeah.
had like Xbox, they had like an Xbox 360, which never freaking worked, but still
Yeah.
like the one time, and I remember it was like picked between Frodo and Sam, and I was like Sam, because I
Yep.
mean I love Frodo a ton, but there's just something about Sam who's like he's one that obviously he helped him, and as you said, he couldn't do it without him. And for me, I mean, it might be Aragon might be my favorite, but then there's also like there's Legolas, who I said I've just
I
loved
know.
forever, and then even like Gollum, I know he's like the evil character, and not a lot of people
So
say
good though.
favorite, but he's just so like Andy Serkis has absolute perfect casting. I think one of the like creepiest and like I think smartest performances is like the best word to use because
Yeah.
he's so creepy, but you can also tell, he's kind of smart in a way, but he's
Oh yeah.
so driven by this that obviously, I mean, spoiler warning, I think obvious for these, but he dives into the lava to try to catch the ring.
I
So
know.
it shows how like the ring messed them all up, and I love like the little hints of the evilness of the ring. This movie is beautiful yet so smart.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it too. Is like, this part always freaked me out as a kid. I always fast forwarded it, but like in the beginning where we saw Schmeagol as a hobbit and like how he got the ring and what the ring did to him, it
Yes.
gave him long life, and then it like basically like it was his curse, and wouldn't do anything without for this little gold ring. And then it did it to Isildur. Remember, like flashbacks throughout the trilogy.
Yep.
That guy had it. He was supposed to destroy it. He didn't. The ring was crazy, like so crazy. It corrupted everyone's minds, and like it turned Schmeagol into Gollum, gave him dual
Yeah.
personality, and this creepy little nasty dude. It's like,
Gollum.
yeah, I think that Gollum.
Gollum.
God, Andy Serkis, probably one of the best working actors today. They need a category for like these voices for the Oscars because I mean, dude, he absolutely was. It's insane. From that to Caesar, and then Benedict Cumberbatch's Smaug. I mean, God, there's so many, man.
There's so many in this trilogy, and even like comparing, of course, The Hobbit. I don't think they're bad movies. I've seen them all. Well, I've seen the third one once and then the first two twice. I enjoy them. I should go back and rewatch them. But there's something, they're like, those are like good movies, like pretty good movies. Some of them are very good. And then there's Lord of the Rings, which they're up here. they're on this whole other level of greatness where obviously, I mean, a lot of people like to complain about the IMDb top 15, but they're obviously up there for a reason. There's also a reason why you have even people who aren't like major film buffs or whatever sitting down to watch 3-hour movies. Because
Yep.
somebody I work with, we were talking maybe like a month ago about Lord of the Rings and all that. Whoa. And then he said that he watched them. I don't know if it was recently, but he was telling me about when he watched them, and he just said we sat down. It was a weekend, and we watched them all in one day. I'm just like, that's like
Wow.
10 hours
Dedication.
of that in a
I
day.
know.
That is dedication. But I mean, that shows how good your film is. Like Peter Jackson's never one that when I think of my favorite directors, I don't normally think of like him, but then when I go and I like look at the Lord of the Rings, I'm like, no, this guy knows exactly what he's doing.
Oh
I don't
yeah.
think there's a misstep with the direction at all.
No, that's what's crazy. I haven't read the books, but I have a buddy who's even bigger Lord of the Rings fan than I am. And he's like, the books are like so detailed. He's like, the movies, there was no way they could capture what the books produce. You know, he's like, the books are great because the movies are almost better because like they took everything that's important and they just like didn't cram it because they're all like 2.5 hour movies, but they made it flow into this beautiful picture of a movie. And I mean, my favorite trilogy of all time, these three movies are like in my top 20 of all time. Two Towers, I actually like the first Hobbit more than the Two Towers. That's a hot take.
Really?
Yeah, and the
Ooh.
reason for that, you kind of mentioned it earlier, like when you have a subplot that's not as interesting, like with the Ents in Two Towers. That was never as interesting to me with Merry and Pippin. But oh, another great scene, and one of my favorite scenes of the movie. Hi, stay down, stay down. Hi. Oh, you're gonna get a dog view. Sorry. Okay.
Sick.
So
Dog cameo.
yep. So okay. When Faramir and like his dad Denethor is a total dick. No one likes. Okay, stay down. Stay down. Um, he's like, Faramir's like, do you wish I had died instead of Boromir? And he's like, yes, I wish that. And Faramir gets all those guys on the horses. They just run at the one-eyed orc who's, oh, I forget his name. It's a stupid name. But anyways, they go charge him, and Pippin's singing that song, you know. And that song, I believe, won Best Original Song at the Oscars, too, which is
I
crazy.
think so.
Yeah. So, like, just how he can, like, make you hate a character so much. No one knew Denethor's name. Like, Faramir's father. It's like, oh, that guy's just a dick. That's all that you
Yeah.
really knew him as. And from is how they close this whole caption. I still don't, as a big Lord of the Rings fan, like when they close the ending movie, like where did they go? I still don't know. I need to read the
Who
books.
knows?
They're like they're going to die. They're going to run off and live in peace. I'm not exactly sure, but and that's the only thing about the Return of the King. The final ending. I was like, where did they go? Because I never correlated my head. Still doesn't. Someone's gonna hate on me in the comments, but it's all good.
Oh well, people do that all the time. They probably just haven't even watched the movie, but
Yeah.
oh yeah. I mean, there's so many great scenes, and that's one thing that I don't know what it is, but it's in like every movie. Whenever there's a scene that's like with so it's typically with someone's father, where it's like the son and the father, and they're
Yeah.
like, "You wish that I would have died instead of them." They say yes. It's just this crazy thing which always gets me. Even in like one of Eminem's songs, I'm thinking of the lyrics. I can't think of what it is exactly. Like it's said, and I don't know what it is, but it's so like emotional every time. I think this movie nails it probably
Yeah.
probably the best out of all of
Oh
them.
yeah.
There's so like we could sit here for as long as the movie is and go like this scene's epic because we could just name all the scenes in the movie
I
and be
know.
like this is awesome, this is this, and it's like the grand scope of this movie that really makes it. I think like
Mm-hmm.
it's just they're like these movies where obviously they're coming from the books, but you can see how relevant they are still today. People are still discovering them for the first time,
Yeah.
and obviously now we're getting a TV show out of it. I'm interested to see what they do there. I'm still not 100% on it, but I'm like, this is gonna be interesting. But I think they're
Yeah.
some of the most important movies out there. Would you agree?
Oh, for sure. Especially for like the action adventure. Like this is like the ultimate adventure. You know,
Yeah.
like just going across two guys who like are against all odds, two hobbits who are like 2 feet tall, 3 feet tall, going across the world with no fighting skills. They know how to party and drink. That's why I think I love this movie so much. Is because like it takes two characters who are unlikely to do really anything, and they go out there and they shock the world in a way. Like they're the underdogs of the story, and they kill the spider Sheila. They fight her. They go through Gollum. They go through Mordor. They kill orcs, goblins. Frodo almost dies a handful of times. So,
Yeah.
see, I love a movie where like a character has to go through all odds to come out on top victorious. To me, that's like a true underdog story, and it gets me going, man. Gets me going.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like almost an underdog story in a way, but it's like this or I mean, obviously he's a hobbit, so he's not technically ordinary for us, but like
Yeah,
for that world, he's an ordinary guy. He's going with
yeah,
Sam, and they're like, obviously you said like they have no fighting skills, all this, and they have to overcome all these things, and we see them
yeah,
do it. We see them turn from normal person to absolute hero. Obviously, we get that amazing line we talked about, like you bow to no one, and that right there, I mean, that line is one of the greatest ever, as we mentioned. It shows, it shows so much of how great these characters are and how
yeah.
we really like we feel for them too. Like as I mentioned that scene where he says like I carry you, come on. Like there's so
Yeah.
much emotion and the score, I mean, some of the greatest scores of all time in
I
all the movies.
I think my personal favorite. I need to download them and start listening to them when I drive. Like I'm gonna go run and just like act like I'm running through the Shire. You know, it's probably the
Carry your
best.
sword
It's
from when you were little.
exactly exactly, man. Oh man. I don't know. It's like it's hard whenever you love something so much. Like it's hard to talk about it sometimes. You're kind of like, what? I'm missing things. And I'll think
Yeah.
about it 2 hours later. I'm gonna go. I should have said this. Dang it. But Peter Jackson to me is probably the most underappreciated director because he gave us. I think the Hobbit trilogy is fantastic, one of my favorite trilogies ever. But like, he gave us at least the Lord of the Rings movies. What he did with these in such a short amount of time, all these characters, and none of them were really well known at the time. This is before even like Orlando Bloom did Pirates of the Caribbean. So like
Yeah.
Ego Mortensen, only one you maybe really knew of was Ian McKellen. Everyone else kind of like, and Christopher Lee, who plays Saruman, he was kind of in the first one, and he was definitely a side
Yeah.
character. But like everyone on there was like, how are we gonna get people excited about this? People are like, dude, J.R.R. Tolkien's books, let's go see him. And like, if you watch the trailers for him, it's just so how funny how dated trailers are. They need to make like updated
Oh
trailers for
God.
these because like in a world different than yours, coming to theaters in 2 years, you're like, oh God. But just this grand scope of things, getting all these characters together, and there's so much story, so many characters. It tells you who you're gonna root for, tells you who you're gonna hate, and it just gives you everything and more, and all these emotions. And again, that not even CGI. It is some CGI, but like just the special effects that they do. 20 years later, I'm gonna show my kids these in the next 10 years. You know, and they're gonna be like, "This still looks damn good," and I'm like, "Yeah, damn right it does." Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like no, you sit down, you watch this 4 hour movie. Like you will appreciate this.
Exactly. Yeah. Like we just fast forward to the battles. No, you can't. You need to know why Faramir and his dad don't get along. You need to know all these things. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a movie. I haven't watched it in probably over a year. I need to go back, sit down, and give it another good long rewatch because every time I do, I get hyped, man. It's like when you watch your favorite movie. You like what's your favorite movie of all time?
It's changed a lot, but Saving Private Ryan is mine right
Okay.
now. When I saw it in theater, when I saw it in theaters, that was the reason it got pushed to my favorite because I was just like, oh, like I'd seen it
Yeah.
a bunch of times, but then I saw it in theaters and I was like, yeah, this is my favorite. So
Yeah. I
it's like
haven't
that.
seen that, but yeah, I know what you mean.
You haven't
Yeah.
seen it?
I know I'm bad. I'm sorry.
Oh God, get off the channel. No, that's your
Oh,
homework, Trevor.
yeah, I know. I got so much homework, man. Everyone's texting me that. But like when you watch Saving Private Ryan, don't you get like you get into emotions? You feel like you're there. Like when I watch Return of the King, I want to cry with these characters. I'm like, I know Frodo lives, but when I think he dies, I'm like, God dang it, is he going? Is he gonna do it? I just get so invested and like in love with movies, and that's what I think the power of not just this movie, but movies in general. Like especially when they're your favorites, they just suck you in, and like you feel a part of their world and you have an experience each and every time you watch them. And I mean, I wish there's one day I will be able to experience these in theaters, and I think that will just blow my freaking mind.
Yeah, there's some that like when we talk about modern classics, I think that this one and like the Dark Knight trilogy, but especially The Dark Knight and some of the MCU, like some of the MCU, but like these three and The Dark Knight are like the big ones we have to talk about. Like when you think of classic movies, you think of this, you think of, as I mentioned before, Jaws and Star Wars and like all these movies, Back to the Future from the 80s and all that. But then these ones, they came out like obviously 20 years ago. That's long, but not nearly as long, like double the length for that for some movies. And everyone appreciates them. Everyone goes back and watches them. So many people want to see it in theaters. And I agree with you. Like when you're watching this, even though it's been years since I've seen it, I remember feeling so emotionally invested. Like when I rewatched Fellowship of the Ring back then, it was basically like the first time I saw it because I knew what was going to happen because I was actually paying attention that time. It was like I just opened this world and then I went on to Two Towers. Two Towers was my favorite when I first watched the trilogy.
Wow.
And then, yeah, I know that may be different for you, but then
Yeah.
of course I watched Return of the King, and I'm just like, yeah, there's no movie that's gonna pass this one. It is like one of the greatest movies of all time. Not just one of my favorites, one of the greatest of all time. The Lord of the Rings trilogy overall is
Yeah.
just it's top tier. My favorite is the Dark Knight trilogy, but this one's in the top three, I think,
Yeah.
for sure. Like there's not many movies that can beat this one. They're not as consistent as this trilogy. It's just mind blowing, and it's something that even if you don't love movies, you have to experience these films.
Yes. So I only person I haven't got to fully watch them is my girlfriend. We've been together for 5 years, and every time she goes, she's like, "Oh, it's just too long of a movie for," and there's so much going on. She's like, "Yeah, I'm good." I'm like, "You can't be good. You need to watch it." I turned to Gollum and Schmeagle. I'm like, "Come on, precious." Yeah. But I mean, like, I could sit here for another 3 hours talking to you about it, like, full Return of the King length. But my friends, you bow to no one. All these, it's the best. It's the best ever to me. It's the best made movie of all time. It's unbelievable, and I freaking love it. It's my favorite. It's the best. I'm biased. I don't care.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it. It's one where when somebody says it's one of the best, I totally agree. And Trevor, I have to thank you for being on the channel. It was a lot of fun as you're fixing
Yeah,
lights or your dog or something.
my
It was a
dog.
lot of
Sorry, she
fun.
grabbed something.
That's okay. My dog does that too. But
Yep.
it was a ton of fun talking to you now. Of course,
Yeah.
it's been a while. It's been like almost a year since I've been watching your stuff. So it's good to
Yeah.
finally connect. Hopefully one
Yes,
day
sir.
we'll have a big group of people all meeting in
Yeah.
person. That'd be a lot of fun. And of
Be a lot
course,
of.
go subscribe to all of Trevor's stuff, follow him and all that. It'll be down below, and I'll link his channel up here. And tell us what you think of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, especially Return of the King, in the comments down below. See you guys next time. Over and out.
Over and out. Nice.